Oh, hey, everybody. The fellas and I were just trying to resurrect the soul of the Republican Party. Wait, what was that?
And to every person trapped in tyranny, whether in the Ukraine, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Cuba, or Vietnam, we send our love and support and tell them they are not alone.
Through this golden door has come millions of men and women. These families came here to work. They didn't ask what this country could do for them, but what they could do to make this refuge the greatest home of freedom in history. Let us pledge to each other that we can make America great again. Make America great again. Make America great again.
Denver, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost.
You're watching and listening to the Mighty Peculiar.
Mighty Peculiar. Peculiar.
Hey, everybody. Another Wednesday night of shenanigans. I'm Denver Riggleman. With me, my good friend, Matt Anderson. And Matt, what the hell are we talking about tonight?
Well, a lot of things. Hell will actually be involved in what we're talking about, but officially,
I figured.
We're talking about the Black Helicopter Caucus, which semicolon or colon, Black Helicopter Caucus, the MAGA demo tape. Which, if you know music, you know demo tapes are usually the test version of songs. So we are going to talk about how something called the Black Helicopter Caucus is the MAGA demo tape.
Well, I'm looking forward to this because you know how much I love conspiracy theories, and you know I love black helicopters. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that for conspiracy theories. But I am interested because I know sometimes you have surprising facts and surprising background when it comes to something it seems as simple as black helicopters.
Speaking of things that seem simple, what I need you to do, you out there and watching and listening land, is like this episode, subscribe to the channel, the podcast, turn on the notifications, do all of those things. You know what? And you can rate and review us on places like Apple Podcasts and stuff. That's always great. Preferably 5 stars. And if you don't give us 5 stars, we're going to sit you in a bathroomless building and make Lauren Boebert cook for you. And let's just see how long you last, because it's not going to end.
We just brought colon back into it.
Semi, full, and
full. That's amazing.
Gone, colon, yes.
Full circle. Oh, I shouldn't mention anyway. But no, this is fantastic.
This is pure class.
Pure class here on the Mighty Peculiar.
While I guess for those watching and for you listening, you can picture it. But right now, I got back from vacation. I'm refreshed. I've changed up my setting here. I have Oswald, my new companion. He's got a little tinfoil hat, lovingly made by my wife Meredith. I just wanted to point it out because I love having this guy next to me.
It's so foul, man.
Okay.
It's so foul.
Before black helicopters, let's talk about things that actually exist on the ground.
Okay.
Have you heard of Black Volga?
Well, I mean, I was in Eastern Europe a lot, Matt, so I actually know what a Volga is. Yeah. And some of the older Russian and Eastern European automobiles, but I don't know. I guess I might have seen some Black Volgas, but I don't know what that connotation means. Gotcha. Black Volga.
If you've watched any spy movie that takes place in the 1960s, chances are it is the kind of car that is following the hero.
Right.
But what is particularly interesting is in the 1960s and 70s, the Black Volga was the subject of a lot of conspiracy theories.
Okay.
was this a pretty common car, would you say?
It was. Yeah. I mean, you're talking Volgas. I was there in the 90s. There were Volgas driving around then.
Right.
There's some other vehicles there too, but yeah, I believe I have driven in a Volga.
Okay. Now, this is going to be very important. Were you driving or was someone driving you?
Actually, somebody was driving me at that point.
Okay. Was it Satan?
Well, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't know. I don't remember doing a sulfur check on that individual, but I don't think it was Satan.
Okay.
As far as I know. Unless
right.
there was a vestigial tail that I missed in the pat down.
You know what? Yeah, well, there was nothing sticking through the driver's side, kind of poking into the back.
No. I don't know if you can work that old clutch with hooves.
Ooh.
But I don't think it was Satan.
So yeah, Satan can't drive stick is what we're learning.
Very difficult. Very, very difficult. I can't imagine.
All right. So imagine you are somewhere in either Poland, Romania, Hungary, Russia, Belarus, Greece, Mongolia, any of those places in the 1960s, 1970s, and you are just like walking down the street and you see a Black Volga pull up near you. Now, a couple things are guaranteed to happen because these are totally true stories, 100%. And there's like no way that this was just purely made up. Either you're going to just be abducted, just like flat out, you're going to get pulled into this car. Your blood will then be stolen from you and used to cure what ails different wealthy Western businessmen, Arabic businessmen,
Whoa. This is very similar to the adrenochrome conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very. Now, so that's what is definitely 100% going to happen to you if the communist secret police was driving.
So you're talking about Men in Black Russian style that are coming up in a Black Volga, and they're actually going to harvest your blood, like sort of like the adrenochrome stuff that's going on. I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah. So if you are picked up by the communist secret police, that's what's going to happen. Now, scenario 2, which is again 1,000,000% true. If you are walking down the street and the Black Volga rolls up and it's the Russian mafia driving it, they're going to steal your kidneys and sell them on the black market. So
no matter what, the Black Volga is like a black cat crossing your path.
Yeah.
As far as superstition is concerned, but either your blood's going to be stolen, like in some adrenochrome scenario, or you're going to have organs absconded with by the Russian mafia.
Yep. Your kidneys.
Black Volga, bad. Deep
Black
state
Volga, bad.
mafia,
Bad.
awful. Got it.
Now, my favorite of these. This time, maybe a window rolls down and a voice asks you, what time is it?
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. If you politely answer what time it is, you're dead because that was Satan killing you. Satan drives the Black Volga and drives around, stopping random passersby and asks, what time is it?
What if I said the wrong time and a year, 20 years in the future?
I think you might just like win immortality. I don't know. You might have tricked the ultimate trickster. Actually, there is a response. Now, just so you didn't feel like, again, a 1970s, resident of Belarus doesn't feel completely vulnerable. If you respond, it's God's time. The car just vanishes. And I'm sure you hear the word drat echoing while it vanishes in a puff of smoke.
I'm laughing because Doug said you would open a hell mouth.
It's true.
Here's what I'm wondering. Would the hell mouth be open when you gave the right time or the wrong time or a time in the future?
Yeah.
And wouldn't everybody, I mean, that's really not a great thing to say, but based on the dental habits of that time, I think everybody would have a hell mouth. If I owned a Black Volga, I'd have some fun Saturday nights. I mean, I would roll up to somebody, roll down the window, say, hey, like what? What time is it? How awesome would that movie be if you're actually the guy, messing around with people in a Black Volga, and then what if something real happened? Like you opened the hellmouth, right? Based on the fact that you're in a Black Volga. So you open the hellmouth, and now you're in trouble. Like you're in the car that's going to harvest you already.
The car itself. See, you know what? And actually, hey, there was a movie, a TV movie in the 1970s called The Car, which was about maybe a Satan-possessed, Satan-driving car. It was Jaws on land with a car in Utah.
Like Christine.
Yeah, kind of. It was really lame. But
yeah, there's also a Russian movie about a black car that can fly and stuff. Remember that?
Yes.
It was a cool-ass movie. The guy had a car, and he was fighting the mob, and the car could actually fly. It was like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but it was an evil Chitty
Chitty Bang Bang, huh?
It's in the Black Volga. I don't know what's going on, so all right. I'm ready for the connection.
So the reason why we're talking about the Black Volga is because it seems to share a lot of the DNA of the black helicopter conspiracy. Right now, this is another one, and I said this to you earlier, Denver, is I feel like I've gorged myself on empty calories in terms of reading, because I've read a lot about black helicopters in the last handful of days, but I feel like I've also there's just nothing to it, right? So just the very, 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 very quick version for most people out there is black helicopters equal bad. That's it. What bad they equal? Well, I mean, that kind of all depends on what you want it to be. Do you want it to be tied to UFOs? It can be. Do you want it to be tied to a nefarious one world government? It could. Do you want it to just kind of annoy and pester you? Yeah, sure. Why not?
That's right. Yeah. Well, the thing is, by the way, thank you. It's Black Lightning was the name of the movie, 2009. Oh. Yes. And I watched that. And I think actually that movie was in Russian, if I remember correctly. And I loved it. I thought Black Lightning was great. I might watch it tonight. Also, when you're talking about black helicopters, for me, it was always, the conspiracy theory, the black helicopters, actually the one world government or the UN black helicopters and all that. Right, Matt?
Yes.
The other thing, too, is I always think that I'm like Henry Hill, right? Played by Ray Liotta, right? In Goodfellas, when he's looking up at the helicopters. I think people who are afraid of the black helicopters, are always looking around like, where are the black helicopters? And oddly, what was it, just a month or two ago when I went on the attack, when the black helicopter conspiracy theory started to come back out. So It's amazing to me, and the people that are still sort of on the black helicopter bandwagon in 2023.
Well, I think the reason why that is because, again, it's a nothing conspiracy theory, right? Like it's a Rorschach test conspiracy theory. What do you want it to fit into? Because, I've said this before. The reason why I'm actually fascinated by the black helicopter concept is because I don't understand it at all. I don't understand it in any iteration. So
just like everything else, it gets memed, right? I mean, you're in a place where there might have been some kind of sighting or some kind of emergency action. You see a bunch of helicopters flying around, or late at night, you're sitting there. Oh my gosh, you already have this sort of predilection of believing in a one world government, new world order, globalist type of conspiracy theory. I mean, what is the stretch with UN helicopters? And by the way, you had a lot of UN conspiracy theories, Matt, right? That's one of those things that have sort of threaded, right, and almost became sort of memed, is that the UN has a secret army, or they're going to try to take us over, or what was it called? Was it Plan 21, where they were going to, I don't know, limit population or something ridiculous like that, right? I think I'm close. So you had all this stuff that was interwoven with UN and the one world government, which is actually controlled by the globalists, which are Jewish. And by the way, I guess just like space lasers, I guess the Jewish world leaders really love to, I would say, invest in black helicopters and Black Volgas.
Yeah, right.
How's that?
I mean, one, I'm on board. You sold me. I get it. 100% black helicopter believer now. Okay. So the reason why let's do this first, because I have a really interesting fun fact, which is both maddening and humorous. do you know where, like, they've traced where the origin of the term black helicopters really been traced to? Like, where was maybe the first usage of it? All right.
I'm going to guess it's in the 50s, but I could be completely wrong.
No, it's actually 1970. All right.
Okay.
In a book called The Late Great Planet Earth by a gentleman named Hal Lindsey, who is like a doomsday prophet kind of guy.
Yeah.
So he and I feel like I just like dipped my toe into the Hal Lindsey madness pool. So like we may have to circle back in our helicopters and do more about this guy later. But he in this book, The Late Great Planet Earth, he posited that all of the locusts in the book of Revelation in the New Testament were actually black helicopters.
The locusts aren't real.
So locusts aren't real. They're actually black helicopters.
Yep, that's fantastic. No, this is absolutely plausible.
Fun fact number 2 is that The Late Great Planet Earth was actually the first Christian prophecy book published by a secular publisher. We can thank Bantam for that. It seems like it might have been published in 1970, kind of on a small press thing. And then 1973, they Bantam picked it up, reprinted it, and up to, and this is going to be a key date, 1990. So from like 1973 to 1990, The Late Great Planet Earth had sold 28 million copies.
Listen, we talk about things being memed. We talk about how belief systems, become part of what it has to be, right? That has to be a UFO because of Roswell. And today, by the way, what's amazing? I used actually Project Mogul, Project Saucer, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book in an argument today at my distillery. I just want to let you know that.
Awesome.
I talked about seekers today. I also wish we had a timeline of what we're teaching people from 1947 right to Roswell, what happened there. We will get to the Bigfoot thing in 1958, I'm sure.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
But also the fact that cognitive dissonance came from actually research into the seekers. Now we're in 1970 where the black helicopter words actually sort of happened, where we began this conspiracy theory. Right. And that's actually sort of odd that there is a continuum, or there's a link to the Black Volga, right? And how this, this ubiquitous car, right, is also sort of a sign of Satan's coming to get you. You're going to die, or you're going to lose a kidney.
Right.
Your blood's going to be harvested. So when I put this all together, and you're talking about from 1970, you said the book came out in 1970.
Yeah,
right?
And then it looks like it got reprinted in 73.
73. What's odd, I was born in 1970, which, I don't know, is that a weird thing? Am I?
Yeah, probably. I mean, nothing's a coincidence.
No, that's what I've heard. So from 73 to 90, 28 million copies?
28 million copies. And
that's metastasization of bullshit right there, if I've ever heard it.
100%. Okay, so now we're in the 1990s, specifically in 1992, and this is where we're going to start the next whole section of the episode, right? So in 1992, we had the presidential contest between Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush, right?
Right.
Now, in the Republican primary, we had one guy named Pat Buchanan who ran an insurgency against a sitting president.
I actually remember. Yeah.
So we're talking 12 straight years of Republican presidential dominance, right? So we had 2 terms of Reagan, and H.W. Bush is finishing up his first term, right? What were your feelings on the state of the Republican Party at that moment?
For me in 1992, in June of 92, I enlisted in the United States Air Force.
Okay.
Right. So I graduated almost at the time that Buchanan was giving his speech. If you're talking August 17th, I would have been right around there where I was, graduating from basic training. All I know about Buchanan, though, I mean, I still was fairly in tune, is that he was a pretty popular figure on television.
Yes.
So I'm going back to 92. I know a lot more, obviously, about Buchanan now. I'm not going to, at 22 years old, I know exactly where this guy stood. But at the time, he had a, as far as people concerned, anybody out in the grassroots, parents and stuff like that, Buchanan was very viable.
Yeah.
Very viable. And I think that when you're talking 90, when you're talking 92, at that point, I think actually he was sort of the precursor to what the GOP is today.
Bing, 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 right? Or ding, 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 bing, bing. Who says bing, bing, bing? All right.
It's the bada bing,
Okay. So, you just nailed it. And that brings us back to the idea of the MAGA demo tape, right? That speech that Pat Buchanan gives at the 1992 Republican convention, in so many ways, you could almost say it was the first MAGA recording, right? Like it's the first time that the MAGA is they're in a garage and they're sitting there and they're just finding the sound. Because throughout that campaign, now the Buchanan's primetime speech, which again was basically a concession from the Bush folks, right? Like he had run this primary campaign against them, and he was to the right on everything. H.W. Bush was always kind of a moderate guy. He was not ever really seen as an ideologue in really any way. A well-intended comment by him invoking the phrase New World Order, which he meant in a positive way, not in some nefarious, overbearing way, is pretty much what leads to the whole idea of the conspiracy. Again,
that's the bloom. Absolutely.
That's it, right?
That was it. No, that was the bloom. That's when it really got started.
And what happens is Buchanan decides that he is going to run on fear of immigrants. Building a wall was actually a thing that he advocated. He was the guy that like at campaign events would hold like a gun up over his head. Like, nowadays you got like the AR-15 lapel pins. This dude was just like running around like he had the Olympic torch, but it was his gun. Like,
well, now in pictures, children are holding AR-15s in GOP Christmas pictures with families. So
again, so hold on to that thread, right? Because what we're seeing here is the very early stirrings that would, again, blossom into what we are living with to this day. So what Buchanan was doing was he was speaking right to the base that was getting more and more angry, right? That Republican base that was fearful of big government, did not like H.W. Bush, despite the fact that, again, he came after Reagan. And this was still in the time where Reagan was untouchable in terms of even most hardcore conservatives still revered Reagan. I know that's waffling nowadays, which is kind of weird. But H.W. was looked at as maybe not trustworthy by the base.
It's interesting. If you think about it, they thought he was a squishy fishy, right?
Yes.
He wasn't, right? The other thing that's interesting about this is how high his polling was during Desert Storm 1.
Yeah.
And then, sort of the precipitous drop where, it's amazing to me. There were some other factors, obviously, in that race.
Yes.
But what's interesting to me, though, is that you had Buchanan as a viable threat even after Desert 1 on the GOP side was a bit of surprise. But again, it's because HW was looked at, whether it was taxes, whether it was policy, whether it was what he wants to do with foreign policy, not isolationist enough, probably a squishy fishy.
That's it, right? You just got it. It didn't matter how successful he was in foreign policy because I think the ground was starting to shift. It was becoming much more back to the America first mindset. What's going to happen is obviously HW is going to lose his reelection bid against Bill Clinton. It's not Perot's fault, but it's not Perot's fault. Like that's a whole other deal.
That's what I was referring to. Yep.
I've seen all the counts where people say like, look, there was not enough vote share taken in each state to flip any one state. Again, I don't know. So
it's a lot of votes. It
was a lot of votes. Now, whether it was determinative, I don't know. But this is actually kind of perfect for the MAGA demo people, right? Because what you don't want when you are this kind of reactionary group is someone who's ostensibly on your side in power, right? Or at least not at the top level. You need an enemy. And Bill Clinton gives them the enemy just by the D next to his name. And that's not a joke that I realized when talking about Clinton. The D's
Move on, man. We're classy.
yes,
Classy.
yes, we are. Right, Oswald?
Move on.
Obviously, what happens is in 1994, there's a place you used to work. Something big happens. What happens?
Okay, you're talking about the contract with America with Newt Gingrich.
Yeah, I'm talking about the fact that the Republicans take control for the first time.
Yes.
In what, 40 years? Yes.
Yes. Oh gosh, I was so stuck on Pat Buchanan. I'm like, what the hell happened with Pat Buchanan in '94?
So I often talk about how these episodes cover a lot of ground, but since we're talking about black helicopters, we're hovering a lot of ground.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh.
So this
why do I feel like, you know what? Why do I feel like that? I wish Doug could put in this segment right here, frickin' Peter Griffin from Family Guy with the whirlybird, right? I don't know. That would be just so freaking great. But go ahead. Sorry, man.
The MAGA demos, as I'm going to call them, right?
Right.
They like an enemy. So it's good to have the White House in the hands of a Democrat. The kind of power that they do like to have is the House of Representatives in the hands of the Republicans, because now they get a chance to really frontline some of their issues, right?
Absolutely.
So they like having an enemy in the White House with Bill Clinton. It's great for their fundraising. It's great to get the word out, like, about all their different causes. And they love having the House of Representatives on their side by being Republican controlled, because now they can take those different issues that have been kind of swirling around, and now they've got a platform for them. And
absolutely,
the greatest spokesperson that they had was actually elected in the Republican Revolution. And we're talking about a woman named Helen Chenoweth. Later, Helen Chenoweth Hague, but in this time span, in the 1990s, she's Helen Chenoweth. She is from Idaho. She represents Idaho's 1st district. And let's just say she wouldn't be out of place in today's Congress.
Pray tell. Tell. You're talking about in '94 during the Republican Revolution and Contract of America that maybe there's a GOP congresswoman that could have some linkages to today.
So she was sworn in on January 3rd, 1995. So again, Contract for America, all of that stuff. And she got labeled as the poster child for the militias, because she was very, very friendly with the rising militia movements. And
not a surprise coming from Idaho first.
Nope.
To be honest, let's be honest. Not a huge surprise. And at that time, I would say the militia movement, or the way that it was portrayed in the news, what had been happening at that point in '94, was pretty brutal, right? And would get even more brutal during her first term in Congress with McVeigh and things of that nature.
Well, exactly. And this is one of those situations where what you have is the person meeting the moment, right? So she gets into this seat. She flips it from Democrat to Republican. So again, she's firmly part of the Republican Revolution. And she does not shy away from controversy. She is seen as the most conservative of the new brand, the new class of Republicans, which says something considering the people that were in that class.
That class, absolutely.
Right. Where she really becomes, I guess, let's say becomes infamous, is during a hearing. It's, I think, with the Fish and Wildlife, like, assistant director. It's again, this is a non-controversial, probably regularly scheduled hearing. I'm sure you know how these things come up. I'm sure it was,
I absolutely know.
Right.
Yes.
So she takes her
5 minutes
stage, and she decides
5 minutes of question time. Yeah.
She decides to press this person, this bureaucrat that is not ready for what's about to happen to him. She basically tells him that he needs to stop. He and his ilk, big government people, need to stop landing black helicopters on Idaho ranchers' land.
Okay.
This guy basically goes, what? What now? We're like fish and wildlife. Like
Well, fish and wildlife is part of the fish and wildlife is covered for the CIA. You know why?
Right.
Because let me tell you, fish and wildlife are the ones that found Bigfoot in 1980, all the burnt husks of the Bigfoots when Mount St. Helens exploded. So it was fish and wildlife that got the bodies out of there to protect the loggers. Because if you found these extinct species, right, they would stop logging in Washington State and Oregon. So what Fish and Wildlife did is that they absconded with the Bigfoot bodies and took them to the Smithsonian, where they're actually buried today, right? The body parts of Bigfoot are in the basement of the Smithsonian, right? In other areas, which even could be Area 51, because there might have been some Queventalures, right? Some mystical Bigfoots that were there. So for her to ask about Fish and Wildlife based on their awful reputation as absconding with Bigfoot husks or burnt Bigfoot bodies based on the Mount St. Helens explosion, I don't think it's that big of a stretch, Matt.
No, again, sign me up. Like, do you have like a newsletter or like a membership or like, like you convince me every single time this comes up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's that vast knowledge of bat shittery that I have in this conspiratorial, head of encyclopedic knowledge up here.
Again, better be tinfoil lined, that hat. Point is, it's obviously crazy that she's taking this moment. Now, she will go on to say that she herself has never seen a black helicopter, but she's heard from enough of her constituents that it's a problem that she felt compelled to bring it up and to discuss it. Now, this leads me to a question for you as someone who was elected, who had constituents. Where do you make a determination between like leading and listening? Do you see what I'm saying? Like if your constituents were coming up to you talking about the black helicopters landing, because again, now let me say this, they were there to, the nefarious reason the black helicopters were landing in Idaho was to enforce the Endangered Species Protection Act.
Oh, was I dead on? Was I dead on?
So,
and by the way, here's the thing. That's the issue that you have. So why did Denver lose in his second round, right? My second go around, okay? Is because I refused to humor the black helicopter individuals.
Right.
The first time that I ran, I actually had a person come up to me and said that they would vote for me if I would address the white vans, right, that were parked outside all the polling stations and were able to actually manipulate votes with some type of laser array that they had within the van, right? It was a secret Democratic cabal that was intermixed with Russians. And that's how they were actually changing the votes within the voting machines, was from these sort of remote white vans with a laser array. I told the person, and he said, I'll vote for you if you say that's your number one priority. Now, there's two things that go through your head, right? Number one, bad shit. Number two, am I being pumped?
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Is this somebody trying to film me saying, of course, I'll look into that, right? And I look like an idiot.
Right.
What is the best course of action for me is to be honest. So I just looked at the person and said, that's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. Okay.
How'd that go over for you?
Like a wet fart.
Okay.
And then when you're looking at somebody with a Q pen, or somebody comes up and said that Democrats are harvesting adrenochrome, right, or the election was stolen, or it's going to be stolen, which was happening well before the election, guys. Come on.
Yeah. Right.
Right. When these things were happening, or that, I was changing the sexual orientation of children, right? There is that line between listening and responding to your constituents and leading, where you have to tell the truth to these people, even though you're not going to get their vote. You can't pander to it.
Right.
My guess is with Chenoweth, right? She probably had read Hal Lindsey.
Yeah.
She was already in the conspiratorial sort of lineage of the far right even then.
Right.
Plus, there's always a belief in the supernatural and something bigger than yourself that can affect events.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about Idaho farmers at the time, how easy would it be for a person in leadership, what you're seeing today, to spin a yarn that you're fighting for something that they think is true, that's complete fantasy. You have now become the leader of a fantasy policy point
Right.
where your constituents believe that you're actually fighting for them on the Hill. It's a brilliant move for a soulless, amoral individual. If you're a narcissist or a psychopath, incredible move. But also, if Chenoweth was a true believer, she might have actually thought that maybe that was a thing. And that should scare people just as much, if not more. So that's how I would characterize this, is that there's people like me that give a shit and want to tell the truth.
Right.
And there's the people like the Chenoweths or the people now that I think are sort of aligned, right? If you're talking about the crazies in the Freedom Caucus, where I was.
Right.
But there's other individuals outside the Freedom Caucus. You know, Gates, I don't think, is a member of the Freedom Caucus. And obviously Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't anymore.
Yes, not anymore.
So you have all that going on. So I think that is the difference, Matt, is that at what point do you sacrifice fantasy for fact, even if it costs you? And people like Chenoweth do not have, I think, that ability to be that honest and forthright.
Right. And again, that's kind of one of the things, like, to go back to the idea of whether she was a true believer or not. I don't think she was. I mean, she was in like her version of conservatism, but like in terms of the conspiratorial side of things, it seems like she was kind of like an opportunist, more or less, right? Because she says, I've never seen these black helicopters. So like, you know, it was basically the, like, I'm just saying, like, I'm just asking questions, right? Like, I've heard this from people, so I, you know, need to report, you know, I need to badger some low level or semi low level person at Fish and Wildlife, like, about this thing.
If she's that stupid or a liar, both of those should be disqualifying.
Well, this then can just, this is perfect, because I've got my favorite Helen Chenoweth fact is she didn't take endangered species or idea protected species seriously at all. You know, basically there was a certain kind of salmon. You know what? It was the sockeye salmon. Sorry, I had to look that up quick.
Delicious.
From Idaho, like, that was on the endangered species list, right?
Right.
But since she can go to her local Albertsons grocery store and just buy canned salmon off the shelf, how could this possibly be endangered? She asked. And
so you're telling me if you can buy turkey, how could the dodo bird be extinct?
Yes, exactly. How can I just buy canned salmon of this totally different kind of salmon? And to the point that she was at like an event in her district. And her, like, she had to bring, it was one of those classic, like, you bring, you know, you cook a dish and you bring the recipe, and it's, you know, the small town, you know, politics, great stuff. Her dish was endangered salmon bake.
That is wonderful. You know what? You got to own the libs.
Yeah. This was Own the Libs 96 style.
Was that 96 when she did
that? That was 96 because it was when she had the endangered salmon bake. Right. She was going into her first reelection. Let's go. Let's take this. Let on the subject of, you know, cooking and delicious meals. Let's talk about Lauren Boebert for a second.
Well, I will tell you that Chenoweth and Boebert sound very similar to me.
Exactly.
And, you know, because anyway, I know you're probably going to get to it, because now that I've seen the theme based on your complete and utter perfection and threading the themes together from the beginning, you know, I got the theme.
Yeah.
So we don't have to pretend here, my friend.
Nope.
Right?
Nope. All pretense is dropped.
Yeah, I think Lauren Boebert, the same militia, you know, sort of the way that she sort of likes to intertwine with the Proud Boy Oath Keeper 3%er type of thing that she does. The fact that she likes to try to hide her tracks from her crazy. And this is the person who said she hoped QAnon was real. I don't know if you guys remember that quote.
Yes.
From Boebert. So listening about Chenoweth, you know, you automatically want to go to a Marjorie Taylor Greene. And by the way, there's some other people in the conference I'm not going to mention now that really roll that way too. And I know we can talk about the GOSARs. Yeah. It used to be Gohmert, who's not there anymore. But there's certainly people that roll that nutty bar.
Yeah.
Down the road. And I think Boebert is there, but she's trying not to show her. I think she's even more of a true believer than Marjorie Taylor Greene, to be honest.
That's the feeling I get, actually, is, and that's why again, we did the Marjorie Taylor Greene episode, and maybe I made a passing reference to Helen Chenoweth. I don't remember exactly, but to me, I definitely found more links in kind of the way she operated to someone like Boebert, right? Like, because for all of Greene, Marjorie Taylor Greene's like complete and out craziness, like her I'm trying to think of how to put this. Like there's a through line there. Like there's a consistency in her craziness that seems like she is trying to just wholeheartedly embrace every conspiracy theory because it helps her. Boebert, as you kind of mentioned, like, she has rather infamously tried to scrub her ties, even as passing as they might be, or just as basic, like, affectionate feelings towards different militias, like she tries to scrub that because she's afraid that it makes her look bad. That to me feels like the Chenoweth, like, I haven't seen the black helicopters myself, but the people I represent, are fearful of them.
Listen, man, if you're a true glue sniffer, right, and you're looking at Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert, as a glue sniffing voter, you would have thought at the beginning, and I think it was noticeable that Marjorie Taylor Greene was much more vocal about her crazy, and you actually had more of a archive of crazy that we covered in our show starting in 2016 through. We had more of an archive. I think what surprised people, and I think why Boebert is still in the Freedom Caucus and Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't, and I'm being completely serious, is that Marjorie Taylor Greene was certainly more public about her belief systems, which were nuts.
Yeah.
Boebert is younger than Marjorie Taylor Greene considerably.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't have that kind of historical record of batshittery, as I've said before. But here's where it's at. The fact that the reason that Marjorie Taylor Greene is on a downward spiral is because she began to be seen as transactional.
Yes.
So if you're a glue sniffer, transactional is not part of your quiver of reality.
No.
If you're crazy, I've always told you guys, has a lot more energy than sanity.
Right.
But crazy has this thing to sniff out the fakes.
Yeah.
And if you come out as a fake, being transactional with McCarthy, right? And then you look on the other side, Boebert stuck the line. If you look at it, wasn't Boebert one of the original 20 that voted against McCarthy as speaker? Did Marjorie Taylor Greene? Nope. Right. So now you have a Chenoweth type black helicopter militia person who's really a believer. I'm going to agree with you. I think Chenoweth maybe was a true believer.
Yeah.
Based on that fact, that anybody who would bring up black helicopters at that point, and the fact that it links into the extinction, right? The Species Act, right? And it links into all of the New World Order conspiracy theories and the Hal Lindsey book. And now you have Boebert, who has this same sort of ability, right, to really believe and to get across that nuttiness. It's just an amazing thing to me.
And again,
it's just fascinating.
And what I would say, and we mentioned it as part of the title, but like I don't think we've explicitly said it. Like Chenoweth and a few other people, there wasn't like a set group, like the way that we now think of like a Gosar, Gates, Boebert, formerly Greene, where like we kind of see them as a group that works in somewhat unison. Chenoweth was labeled as part of something called the Black Helicopter Caucus. But again, she was basically the founding member and really the only real member. Like there's people that would like join in on some of the craziness, but most of them seem pretty savvy enough to not get tied to it nearly as much. Which is why, again, I think she's so interesting to focus on and put her in, in conjunction with like a Pat Buchanan, right? Like Pat Buchanan nationalizes a lot of the issues that the increasingly angry, increasingly suspicious and paranoid base, is talking about. So
it's also an increasingly religious base.
Yes, and that's another thing that Pat Buchanan is, known, for. He's one of the I forgot what he's Catholic, and he is like the old school, like, he's
down the line.
Yes,
he's down the line. Yes.
So you got a figure like him that, while unsuccessful in unseating HW in the primary, extracts enough concessions and gets himself major airtime during the convention, in which he does his fire and brimstone speech, which, again, a lot of people will say could be one of the reasons Clinton won, is because people saw Buchanan featured at it was like a primetime address at this convention, kind of mentions H.W. Bush, but really is doing his hard right, red meat to the base. And that scared people. But it scared a lot of people, and probably maybe helped get Clinton in, but it also inspired a lot of people that also got Chenoweth in 2 years later. So
imagine Buchanan and Chenoweth on Twitter in their prime, or on any social media, right? And the fact is, I say we, the collective we, but I think the GOP could keep the crazy side at least enough behind a wall.
Yes.
Right. Where they could sort of hide, the weird people in the basement.
Yeah. That's basically.
What's all that noise down there?
Yeah.
What is that? That's just Pat and Chenoweth. They're just downstairs. They're doing a little party.
Yeah.
They're doing little black helicopter models and talking about Jesus coming back. And right. I think that's all linked. I think conspiratorial thinking and the jailbreak of Christian nationalism, if you want to talk about, there's a minor jailbreak in 94.
Yep.
I think you start putting that together, and I think you get the seeds of the Boeberts of today.
It's exactly what it is. And again, I mean, to me, the thing, when I saw that, Chenoweth was called the poster child of the militias, I was thinking, if that was something like an honorary title that was bestowed year after year, I have to imagine Boebert gets it, now.
I wouldn't be surprised if a Black Helicopter Caucus comes back into Congress the way things are going, and I'm not even kidding at this point.
I feel like they're already there. They just don't have that name. So again, all the listeners and viewers, if we want to start trying to get that going, hashtag Black Helicopter Caucus, this stuff, we could probably.
I think we should sell that T-shirt.
Yes, we should.
The Black Helicopter Caucus T-shirt. And I have a question though.
Yeah.
UFOs or black helicopters, are they the ones gutting cows out in the pasture?
Yes, both. Because that is also, what some of the concerns were about black helicopters, is that they were somehow involved with cattle mutilations, which I'm like, that's some crazy flying, because you got to go sideways to slice that cow.
It's probably spec ops. It's probably Fish and Wildlife Special Operations. They probably have their little forest thing on. One guy's in a Smokey the Bear costume to actually trick the cows into some shit.
Yeah.
And then when they're all looking at the Smokey, they come up and they're and really quiet, and they have infrared, they have thermals, and they're looking around.
I feel like this is a whole can of salmon we don't want to open. And I was just about to call Doug in, so he knows. Doug knows exactly when I'm like, oh boy, we've hit the moment.
I saw it in your face. Yeah. Now that we've turned the forest rangers of America into sinister beings.
Have you ever seen Smokey the Bear and Bigfoot in the same place?
No, we haven't. And we should definitely start that conspiracy on Reddit right now.
We should. Absolutely.
But I got to speak to Matt's thing about the Ross Perot campaign that helped Clinton and stuff like that. We have a lot of young kids watch us, believe it or not. We cannot also overlook how magical Bill Clinton was in 1992. Obama's race was the Bill Clinton cover band. He beat Hillary Clinton in the primary with her husband's campaign. Right. Would you agree with that, Denver?
I would. Absolutely.
So Absolutely. We can never play down that piece of politics. Right. I just wanted to make that clear. Not just Buchanan scaring the crap out of people. Although Pat Buchanan to me is like when you take like a jazz class, or you're learning like how the chronological order of like, which is kind of like the Sith in a way, because they always in pairs of their proteges
Right.
and the masters, right? Pat Buchanan is Dizzy Gillespie, right? Like I would say Louis Armstrong is Spiro Agnew, but Dizzy Gillespie is definitely Pat Buchanan, because he begets Charlie Parker, and and Charlie Parker begets Miles, and this just goes on, and you get this sort of thinned out, streamlined, low rent version of the original.
It's inbred jazz.
What's that?
It's inbred jazz. It's dumbed down, but yet like perfected.
It's exactly inbred jazz. Yeah.
Me wearing this hat, I'd have to say.
I want to know how this is going to connect.
No, but a lot of my family's from West Virginia, so if we could stay away from that line of questioning,
I'm sorry.
Please, if we could do that. No, it's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, we're not. I don't think
we lost all our West Virginia.
That. Right, but yeah, all right. So I'm going to get to the mail.
All right, mail.
Okay, so Frankie writes 28 million copies of the late great Planet Earth were sold between when was it, 1970 and 1990?
Mm-hmm.
For scale, how much material that is, the biggest selling record in 1990, which was 30 million copies, and we can all remember the logo of Madonna's Immaculate Collection.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
So just for scale. So that's just a remark that Frankie made that I thought was interesting. Here's a great question. This one comes from Aaron. Was the Bush Clinton Perot race the last time the equal time law is observed?
Oh my goodness.
It's a great question.
I don't know. I usually have those answers.
Well, wait. So do you mean because Perot then
he was in all the debates?
Commercial, essentially.
He was in the debates. Yeah,
he was in all of the debates.
All the debates.
Okay,
right. Maybe that's a research question there, Mr. Doug and Mr. Matt. I don't know.
Yeah,
I would say that it's a great question.
What's that, Matt?
No, I was going to say. I guess I'm trying to remember like what the criteria was set at that time to get on the debate stage, but because that changes cycle to cycle for the most part, right? But
yeah.
So my assumption is that yes, it's the last time we probably saw it like in practice, but not because there was any real like trying to quash that as much as like when was the last time we had a third party candidate actually make as much of a mark as Perot did?
That's a great question.
Because again, think about this. You got Buchanan runs third party several times, but like when he takes over, Perot was the Reform Party, right? So,
I believe so. Yeah.
Perot does the 92, 96 elections, sits out the next one, and Buchanan is the
you're going back in time now.
He takes over for Perot. But he has not nearly the amount of influence or polling success that Perot did.
Great question.
All right, well, I'll say a name that'll just send a hell shiver down your spine. Ralph Nader.
Yep. Oh God.
Yeah. So like, he wasn't on the.
Matt.
Yeah.
He wasn't
on the. God, I hate him.
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't on the debate stage.
So for me, as my age, like that, the 2000 election was the first one that I was old enough to vote in. Right? Well, because I was born in 81. So
meanwhile, me and Denver are like, we're old, you see. We smell like mothballs and soup.
You guys have
2000.
I'm sure both of you have Werther's Original in your pockets right now. But and to me, like, so
shut up, man.
So I vividly remember like the Ralph Nader of it all at the time. And he eventually we'll have to do. I mean, we kind of did with RFK, although with RFK Jr., like he's like a loony left person, but is way more right nowadays. But Nader really hit a lot of those same marks, where it's just like this guy was just a drain on the actual like electorate. Like,
yeah, but he wasn't. My point of he wasn't allowed on the debate stage.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So he wasn't like. I guess the question was about Ross Perot. Like there were some people who had a lot of noise behind them, and Ralph Nader was one of them, and never got to that.
No, Perot. If Perot didn't make a couple mistakes, I think he'd even gotten more votes. And I think
if he had left the campaign and then got back in, that was kind of what was seen as the major blunder.
It was. I think Perot had a lot more juice than he even knew he had.
Who am I? Why am I
juice.
here?
All right, one last question. This one's at Denver. He's the, like we used to call him, the cosmic elephant in the room. If Reagan were around today, would he be dismissed as a beta male globalist enabling cuck who washes the taints of communist, Satanist pedophiles who groom our children with drag queens and the Barbie movie cabal?
Possibly. I don't know if you covered all of them. I think the thing that we're really going to see with Reagan, since he came up through the Actors Guild, is that he certainly would have been part of the Hollywood adrenochrome harvesting babies Democrats also, based on the fact that he came from there, right? So that's the real issue, I think, Doug, is that he I think the fact that he was an actor would be really difficult, and especially that he was part of the union movement also. I just don't see where he could have broken through.
I miss the I always miss the adrenochrome.
But I'm there for it.
Let's think about his probably one of the biggest sins that Reagan would have committed, which is very simply he idolized and had the bust of FDR in the Oval Office.
Guys,
right?
Let's look at the biggest thing he did, 1986 amnesty.
Yeah,
it's over.
Yep.
Oh yeah, nowadays, yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we got to end, but I was at a campaign event, and actually it was farmers, it was dairy farmers out here, I think in Franklin County in Virginia here. And I had about 40 farmers show up. And this is when I was running for my first run, which I won, and maybe my fourth or fifth meeting. And I remember I go in there, I'm like, this is going to be an easy meeting, right? I got 50 acres. You guys know my great grandfather was a hog farmer, right? My granddaddy had cattle, right? My other granddaddy was a chicken farmer. I mean, we had chicken houses. I mean, man, like that's my people, right? So I go in there, and I had one of the most bizarre conversations about immigration, because when you're in a district that's 65% agricultural, H2A and H2B workers, right? Guest workers are huge in Virginia, especially in the Republican areas because of the massive amount of farming. One farm, a huge peach farmer up here, he had 100 and some employees. And he goes, Denver, do you know a percentage of my guys are guest workers? I'm like, what, 80%? He goes, 100% guest workers. Think about that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be getting our fruit. So I'm sitting in this meeting. Everybody is almost pro-immigration, all Republicans. And I said, well, what would you think about amnesty then? Just threw it out there, said like Reagan in 86. Oh my God. Out of the 40, 38 of them, if they were actually packing that day, I think they would have shot me across the table. I said, hold on, you said you wanted more liberal H2, H2B regulations, things like, yeah, we can't give them amnesty. Well, there was a Republican in the corner, older gentleman. He goes, Congressman, thank you for asking that question. He goes, because let me tell you right now, back in 86, one of my closest friends was given amnesty by Reagan. He said he still works here today. I said, wow. She's been here 39 years, right? He goes, if there was a Republican that would do that today, they would get every Hispanic vote in the country. And I got to tell you, Reagan was on to something. And, for me, who's been to the border, I know the border is a mess. I know that there are things that need to be done there. But I think the demonization of people that are unlike us is really something that's destroying, the part of the fabric of being America, right? Is the hatred. We are all in one time or another immigrants, unless we're First Nation, right? Unless we're Native Americans. So I think when you're talking about Reagan, I know this is full circle. I think you're talking about somebody who would have a tough time even getting top 5 in the nominating process this year. So
Wow.
That's really what I think, especially if he had a record that he said the same things that he did either about immigration or Nation of Immigrants, the things of that, the lobbyists and the monies wouldn't come in behind him. That's what I think.
Well, on that note, Matt, sign us out, because that's a perfect place to end.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for watching, listening. You can remember to like, subscribe, all of that. You can email us at mightypeculiar@gmail.com, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Peculiar. Odd, strange. Odd, strange.